I left Halo and came over to Corva, which was fantastic. I worked there for a year and a half, and that's how you and I met. And that was a great learning experience. Corva does some amazing things and is really looking to do some things with AI and machine learning, as a lot of people are, right? Yep. I mean, it's top of mind. But the one thing it always comes down to is data and how good that data is, right? The biggest question I think I've heard from operators, no matter what I was doing, is that we need quality data to really make our software run it, or run analytics for our C-suite or anything like. If we're going to make real-time decisions on a project that we have millions of dollars invested in, that data needs to be as QC'd and QA'd as possible before it comes to us and we start looking at it to make decisions.
Welcome back. This is Lee again with the Cold Ones with Cold Bore. Got another special guest today, one of our latest and greatest additions to the team here in Houston, Mr. Justin Ashley.
Hey, Lee, thanks for having me on today. Excited about it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. We've really started to kind of grow the sales team out a little bit. You've joined us 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, about 3 months ago now.
Yeah. So really put you on the spot. What's your thoughts? Been here for 3 months. What do you think of Cold Bore?
I'm very happy to be at Cold Bore. Like what we're doing. So and it's fun to be a part of a company that's young and still growing. And I like being a part of a group that has so much field background and history. So it kind of takes me back to my where I originally broke out with drill bits. And it's kind of fun, to kind of have that knowledge, these understandings of how the actual field works, not just the corporate office life, but then also the software side of it is incredibly exciting to me. So
yeah, and what was really exciting about when you came on is like when we've been building out this sales team I've been here 4+ years. That was something that Shane and I had always really been focused on and very cognizant on. It takes us a little while to hire somebody because we have a culture that we've kind of created. Yeah. And so everybody that comes in, we want them to kind of have the same kind of attitude, the same culture, and wants to enjoy the people they work with.
Yeah. And, and so I spent 6 years actually working for a software company that focused on employee recognition and engagement. So, our talking points were obviously to HR, but it was always around culture. What's your culture like? What's going to keep employees at your company, and retention was obviously the number one issue for HR at almost every single company. So it was, I was very familiar with cultures and seeing good ones, seeing bad ones, and Cold Bore culture is amazing so far. So I'm glad to be a part of it and be in it.
But one thing I do, I'm always curious about, and I think people like to hear, is how did you get into oil and gas? Because you took a little bit of a winding turn to get to what you're doing today.
Yeah, I have an interesting story, I guess, as my background. I mean, I started out as a collegiate basketball coach, and I felt like that was going to be my path for forever, and did that for roughly 10 years. And then I had a friend of mine in Midland who I'd gone to college with. We both went to New Mexico State, the real Aggies.
Oh,
there. Yeah, sorry, just going to put that out there for you. So I knew he was doing something in oil and gas. I had no clue what it was. Just reached out to him. I was like, hey man, I'm looking to change careers and make a path change here. And he was like, yeah, definitely. Come on, I'll get you introduced to some people. So I went down to Midland and met with Andreas and Shane Workman, and came on with PDC Logic and JZ Bits at the time. So it was a great family-owned company. They've now sold, and it's Torex Bits, but really great people. It was a awesome way to get into the oil field. And I worked the field for probably 2-3 years, something like that, maybe 2. But I learned quickly,
Yep.
And those company men is, if they didn't scare you off the first time, by being gruff, that was kind of their plan, to see if they could scare you away. If you'd come back, man, they were ready to teach you and help you learn. So
that was, I'm first generation oil field. Out of all my friends, I was the only one who went into this, industry. And it was funny. So when I, got the offer to go and join Weatherford as a field engineer trainee, you had a lot of people that were like, man, do you know what you're getting yourself into? And I think people had it in their mind that it was like this the drilling scene from Joe Dirt,
Right.
where it's just like guys are like beating the crap out of you, and I'm sure some of that goes on, the hazing, and there is definitely some good natured ribbing.
Yeah,
but
still
it was
looking
like,
for the V door. I don't know where that's at.
Yeah, the key. You're looking for the key. All that good stuff, right?
Right.
And so like when I got out there, I was like, it can't be that bad, and it wasn't. Like, I mean, everybody was just super helpful. That was a cool thing, is because there's a lot of people that can get to this industry and do it really well that don't have that level of field experience.
Right. And, it was learning a new language. And, my background, I was going into coaching. So I had my degrees are in education, but my bachelor's was in Spanish education. And so, went to school to learn a new language and be able to teach that, which don't ask me to do now, but coming into this industry, I mean, it was learning a new language too. And having to really understand how people talk and what they're talking about, basically, and then being able to kind of use that same vocabulary and grow. I spent a lot of time. I mean, thankfully for phones and the internet, man, I was online reading all kinds of stuff. And at the time, what was the show that was out? Black Gold.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
Black Gold. Yeah. So that's right when I came out, and that was all taking place in Midland. So I was watching that.
Yeah, I think that was like what a lot of people thought. Like, that was everyday life in the oil field, right?
and then it wasn't quite like that.
No. And so, I mean, me being frac, there wasn't a whole lot of, when I got in 2010, there were some YouTube videos and some papers you could read.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like just eyes wide open. I remember, man, should I go with this frac route? I got a job offer. And I was like, wait a second, I just got a job offer. We're taking it.
Right. Yeah. I'm getting in.
I'm getting in, and here's what we're going to do. And I didn't have to find the V-door. I think they tried to get me to look for a pipe stretcher one time.
Right. Yeah.
That was a typical frac one. So did you play college basketball?
No, I did not. So
Okay.
I played high school basketball, a little bitty school in New Mexico, Grady, New Mexico. I graduated with like 13 kids.
There you go.
Itty bitty 1A school. But yeah, I was too slow to play college ball.
So you were you grew up on a working horse ranch.
Yeah, so cattle ranch,
yeah.
in eastern New Mexico. My dad still runs it out there, and he's got it stocked right now, running yearlings. And so he's out there on his own. My mom passed here, I think 11 years ago, and he's just out there doing it on his own. But it's kind of one of those things. The agriculture life, farm life, ranching, all those people look out after one another. Yep. So, all the other little ranches around him, they'll come and help him, work cattle. And I think they're actually branding this weekend. So,
I mean, that's sometimes like a barbecue party.
Right. It could be.
You get all those people coming over.
You've got to feed them.
You got to feed them.
Cowboys are hungry. You got to feed them. So,
I mean, that's a lifestyle. Like, so I grew up, both sides of my parents' family were farmers in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And so very similar to I'm assuming on the ranching style, is you're either praying for rain or you're praying for no rain.
Right. Like, we were always praying for rain.
Yeah.
Just keep it coming, please.
We y'all were. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I remember growing up, I'm like, man, the crops really need a good rain. And then the next year, dang it, the crops don't need any more rain.
Stop. We're about to harvest. Please don't rain. Yeah. Please don't rain. Yeah. On the ranching side, it's a little different. We just want rain.
Yeah.
Just keep it coming. Something to help grow grass, because, man, like everything else in this country right now, everything's gone up in price. And I mean, just to feed, cattle out there is expensive. If you don't have grass growing, I mean, that price is almost doubled at this point. So
that's a lifestyle. We've talked about this,
right?
Like that your dad, I think, even said, "Hey, you're either in or you're out."
Right. Yeah. I mean, when my brother is 2 years older than me to the day. And when he graduated, and my dad had this talk with him, and when I graduated, he had the talk with me, which was essentially, all right, you've got two choices. You can either go to college or you can stay and work with me on the ranch. And I mean, we grew up working on the ranch, so that we knew what that was. And we were both like, man, I want to go to the university and study and kind of go down my own path. And ever since then, he's like, okay, y'all made that choice. That's what you're doing. Because both of us, my brother and I, have both gone back and like, Dad, could we maybe partner with some cattle? And he's like, no, you made your choice. So no, not right now.
He's obviously been doing it for a long time, but he recognizes, I mean, it's an in or an out.
Yep. And you're either all in, and that's what he talks about too. Like, he'll never retire, but he doesn't consider it a job either. I mean, this is just who he is and what he does. And
if he decided to sell it all, he'd wake up and not know what to do with himself.
Exactly. Yeah. What would he do? I mean, like, he sold so he was running some cow-calf for the last few years. And this past year, maybe it's 2 years ago, year and a half, but he ended up selling all of his cows and calves. and really just to kind of let the place grow back and heal up a little bit, get some green grass growing again. And so that the entire time he didn't have any cattle on that property, he was just losing his mind.
Oh, I can imagine.
He found things to do. I think he fixed more fence around that place, just miles and miles of brand new fence. But
they probably just finding just chores to do,
something
every day.
to do,
break stuff to do, break
exactly.
stuff to fix it.
Right? Yeah. It's like a frack life. Right?
Yeah,
just
exactly.
break it so we can fix it.
Yeah, we'll figure out how we can make it better because we broke it.
Right.
So there is some interesting parallels between that kind of lifestyle and being in this industry.
Yes, very
especially
much.
in the field. So having that experience is growing up on a ranch and assuming waking up crack of dawn, going out, working hard all day. How did that kind of like instill the work ethic in you? And did that kind of, as you eased into the field and stuff like that, was that something that you thought about?
Definitely. I mean, I was raised to work hard and to be willing to do any job that was out there. My mom was a school teacher. She was an incredible school teacher. And her wisdom and kind of advice to me was, do not be afraid to sweep grab the broom and sweep. You can do that too. And that hit home. It's like, do whatever it takes. Start at the bottom, work your way up, but don't be, afraid to get down and get your hands dirty and do some of the work that other people might not want to do.
And so some of the best advice I got when I, went to Alice and was put on a frac crew as an engineer or the trainee, was my boss at the time. He was like, do whatever it takes to get the job done, obviously safely and everything else. But he was like, because you'll endear yourself to the crew. And that crew can either make or break you. They can make you look really, really good, or they can make you look really, really poor.
Right.
And so like that was me. Like I was like, I wanted to learn everything. You pick up the broom, you pick up the hammer, you go out, and like there were times because you're the guys would be like, hey, no. Don't get the hammer out of your hands.
Right. Right.
I want to do this.
Yeah, I gotta learn.
I gotta figure this out.
Yeah. So and I worked for, when I first started coaching, I worked for a Hall of Fame basketball coach by the name of Lou Henson. And Lou Henson had been at New Mexico State, played there, coached there, took them to Final Four, I believe, back in the 60s. And then he went on to Illinois and coached at Illinois for 20 some odd years, took them to a Final Four. And then he left and came back to New Mexico State, thankfully for me, because I got to start working with him at that time and had an opportunity to work directly for him for 5 years. But he led by that example too. So I mean, my job at the time, man, I was ball boy, I was cleaning whatever, sweeping the floor, all those types of things. And I remember coming in and turning the lights on at the Pan American Center, and there's Coach Henson already out there sweeping. He's got it. He's going up and down the floor, and I was like, man, that guy's. That's something to look up to. He doesn't need to be working right now, and he's been to multiple Final Fours. He's one of only a handful of coaches who've taken 2 different universities to a Final Four. He's one of the all-time winningest coaches ever, and he's out there sweeping the floor, getting ready for practice.
So being a basketball coach, like I follow recruiting mainly like football and stuff like that. Huge football fan. But being a basketball coach, like you're in sales now, but you had to be a salesman as a coach. Like recruiting is.
That's it. I was selling a university and selling a program.
Yeah.
And, selling an education. And so, that was an easier transition. And thankfully I've learned a lot. I look back even during my recruiting days or my early days in oil and gas and sales, and you just kind of look back and go, man, I'm embarrassed by how naive or how immature I was in how I went about this profession of sales. And, I think I've gotten better and better as it is. And, I never wanted to be a slick sales guy or, a used car salesman. No offense to those types of people, but that wasn't me. And I wanted to go in with integrity and content. And, if I'm truly going to sell something, I wanted to believe in it. And, so that's kind of where I come from. Lee, you and I've talked a lot. I mean, I've got a strong faith in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So, it says in the Bible, you do everything in his honor. And that includes work, right? Yep. And so, I try to keep that faith and that mentality as I work in whatever it is I do. So.
Yeah, and this industry is so small. You have to, like, the people who have develop a poor reputation, it takes a long time to repair.
Right. Yeah.
And so, like, I always joke and say I'm not a sales guy. Like, I, very much like to get to know the people that we're doing work with. Try to take them on that kind of understanding of the product that we offer, which is SmartPad, right? And it's just it's more fun that way. Like you enjoy it because your customers become like, I think one of our buddies, JP Warren, always says frustomers.
Right.
Frustomer, like it's a friend customer, right? And that's a great way to look at it. And you develop these relationships and networking. I mean, obviously Cold War is very big on collaboration and network,
right.
Stuff like that. How have you have you changed how you built your network from when you first got started in Midland to when you came down here?
I would say a little bit. I mean, I still am just tried to always just be who I am, and I can't change any of that, good or bad. But I think I've learned better how to communicate, and I've been in more classes and coaching sessions with sales leaders, kind of going over ways to communicate things about your product or what you're doing. And I've taken all that in, and then I've found a way to try to utilize that where I'm still not losing who I am as a person as I'm communicating with people. So
yeah. So all the different things that happen throughout the year. Like, is there a favorite conference or favorite thing that you look forward to every single year?
Well, I'll tell you what, the best conference I've ever been to was the one that we just went to here recently was Thrive.
Yeah.
And that was phenomenal. I mean, that was, really got to listen to, some top CEOs and really get some of the behind the scenes business that's taking place and, how they're forecasting, what they're thinking as they go through this, how they're using data, how they're using software, as we continue to advance in this industry with both of those. So that was by far my favorite. And
it's definitely one of mine. That's the second year I've been now. And I think I've only been going like maybe 3 years, but Daniel Energy puts on a heck of a conference.
Yeah, they really do.
They do a very good job of bringing in, high quality people. And it's not very often that those people sit on a panel and then, field like off script questions from the audience. And so you really get to see kind of like the way they truly think, that's not being run through a marketing machine, that's not, questions being prepared and reading off a script. I mean, you get some really great insight.
No, you do. Yeah. I mean, I was just blown away by how impressive it was. I mean, and obviously Diamondback spoke at it, and this was right after, it announced that they had plans to acquire Endeavor. So it was kind of interesting to hear that so as it's so fresh on everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it was like literally days after, something like that. I was honestly shocked that they, he was able to still attend with everything, because that's every question is going to be curiosity around that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The other is at Minute Maid Park, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not very often you just get to nosy around there and not be, a packed house for a baseball game or a concert or something.
Yeah. Got to go out there and hit some balls on Minute Maid. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
good experience.
It's not every day you get to say you got to do that.
Yeah.
The first year I went, I did it, and somebody took a video, and I was really excited. I showed my oldest kid Jackson. I was like, "Hey, check this out. Your dad's getting to hit balls at Minute Maid," and he's like, "That's the worst baseball swing ever. You look like a golfer." Like, well, give me
Thanks,
my dang
son.
phone. Get out of here.
Thanks, son.
Get out of here. Thought you were going to be impressed by that instead of just critique my form.
Go to your room.
Yeah, there you're grounded. So obviously, completions, drilling, just this industry in general has kind of gone through like a technology evolution over the last few years. What have you seen kind of, where customers or just people in the industry you talk about, like when it comes to data, automation, AI, like where are they kind of their mindset?
Well, what I find interesting, and I do find data and software super interesting, and started really when I was with Halo Recognition and how we were utilizing data sent from our clients into our platform and how we could use it. And, looking back on that now, man, that was minuscule to the type of data that, oil and gas companies, on the completions or drilling side are really wanting to utilize and run analytics and ingest into all these different softwares that they run. So it was interesting to get introduced to it there. And then, I left Halo and came over to Corva, which was fantastic. I worked there for a year and a half, and that's how you and I met. And that was a great learning experience. Corva does some amazing things and is really looking to do some things with AI and machine learning, as a lot of people are, right? Yep. I mean, it's top of mind. But the one thing it always comes down to is data and how good that data is, right? The biggest question I think I've heard from operators, no matter what I was doing, is that we need quality data to really make our software run at a run analytics for our C-suite or anything like. If we're going to make real-time decisions on a project that we have millions of dollars invested in, that data needs to be as QC'd and QA'd as possible before it comes to us and we start looking at it to make decisions.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's really probably, it's not unique to oil and gas, but it's software programs are only as good as the data that they receive.
Yep.
So it's bad data in, bad data out. So that's kind of why I was really intrigued by cold bore. And that's when you and I met. Is there really needs to be some standardization and in the completions field. And I think people have been trying to do it on their own for a very long time, or everybody's kind of siloed working on certain things. And what I saw cold bore really doing is to be the one to really standardize all that data and then be able to push that out into whatever software program that they the operator wants to use. It'd be a Corva or PowerBI or Spotfire, whatever it is. Keep that data standard. So here's what I would hear from engineers on drilling and completions is like, man, I'll get a PJR and I'll see, pressure rate was X for this stage. And then I'm going, well, let me pull it up here in this, what I got reported over here, and it's something different. And I'm looking here and it's something different. And they don't know which one is accurate, and so much of that is some manual input as well. That the more automation that can take place can eliminate some of that human error, which it happens anytime you're having to manually input something. There's a chance for error there.
Yep.
So the more automation that can take place obviously helps their lives out, and keeps that data as standardized as possible across all softwares.
Yep. And what's really interesting is, so in this industry, like for years, one of the, I always hated the saying, and I hated it when my bosses would tell it to me, but it was, we're not going to change because this is the way we've always done it.
Right.
And what you're seeing is a lot of people are embracing that change now and saying, okay, just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean that was a correct way. And so they're using the data to kind of relook and say, okay, let's take a step back. Let's look at this data that we now have access to, right, and say, are we doing this? Is this the right decision? Or are we just falling into the old adage of just, we've always done it, we're not going to change.
Right. And I think you've told me this before too, is what it's efficiency and effectivity. Yeah. And the effect. So, I hear people say it all the time. Well, we've reached max efficiency on our programs. Yep. I don't know if that's really accurate. I think you've gotten really efficient, but let's go in and see. Yeah, you can say you're pumping for 20 hours, but were you pumping effectively for all of that? So,
and that's a new way that people are starting to really look at and saying, okay, just because we're showing efficiency, yeah, but how effective was I in actually doing the job that you put on paper?
Right.
Or how effective was our job in general?
Right.
And so that's kind of a fun topic. I love really going down that road, because it's forcing people to kind of look at it and say, man, maybe I'm not as good as I was.
Right.
Or I think I am.
Maybe there is more room for improvement.
Yep.
Well, I also think that, right now I see so many different BUs that are just siloed. Drilling's doing one thing. Yep. The data is not really shared over with completions, and the completions data is not shared with, production. So, bring all that together, however that's possible. I see that taking place within the industry, where all this data from the well being drilled to actually producing, they're going to be able to look at that and make some, ideas about, come up with some plans on how to do that. There are a lot of people, a lot smarter than you and I, Lee, are going to look at that data and say, okay, now I've seen the full picture of the well, and I've got access to all this data. How does it tie in together, and how's that going to help us, produce more?
Yeah. So. And that's ultimately it. And that's one thing that we've recognized a couple of years ago, that there's not a single company that's going to own the data space and completions. It's what it is it's going to be several companies that are going to collaborate together to offer the best, most valuable product to the end user, which is the operator, right? And so it's those companies that are willing to say, hey, you've got something maybe a little bit better than what I have. I can go and develop it and spend a ton of money and time, but why? Why reinvent the wheel? If you've already have something and we bolt it together, then it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're seeing with some of the partnership type things is, we've always joked and said we were like Switzerland or Sweden. We're the cool version of the UN, I like to say. We just like to bring people together. We like to collaborate. We like to, get everybody on the same page and say, hey, how can we help you and how can you help us?
Right. And everybody does something different and does something better, right? So you understanding what your lane is and how you can be the best at that, and then working with somebody who's the best at this, and bringing those together, obviously is going to be be better for the end user. Like you said, the operator at the end of the day is going to have a better product when they're working with multiple people who do something really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, we're going to shift gears before we close out. So being a basketball coach, I want to put you on the spot. One of your craziest recruiting stories.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I had some interesting kids throughout those years. Well, I'll tell you this one. Pierre Barlow at West Texas A&M, recruited him out of a little junior college in Mississippi. I can't even remember the name of it. It was East Central Mississippi Junior College. I don't know, something. Mm-hmm. And it was just by chance that I saw him playing I made a road trip. I left Amarillo, Texas, and I just hit junior college after junior college all the way out to Georgia, and then drove straight back, me and one other guy.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think we probably hit maybe 10 different junior colleges all the way to Georgia, and then came back, right? Well, got to the one in Mississippi, and I was going to watch this other kid play and saw Pierre out there playing, and I knew we needed a 3. Pierre was 6'2", lanky kid, could dribble a little bit, had an okay shot. But he could guard, we were always a defensive team, so he was a really good defender. I was like, man, okay, this kid, he could work. I mean, I'm looking for a kid. The guy I wanted to come and watch wasn't even there. So, started recruiting Pierre and sold him, got him to the university. And he was the first kid from his family to ever go to school.
Wow.
And go to, after, any college. And his mom was so proud of him. And, and Pierre was a lot of work. I mean, there was times I was having to get in his face and like, go to class.
Yeah.
Just go to class, please. I got you here. Please get to class. And he did. Kid graduated, and he's the first one in his family to have a college degree. He's married, has a little kid, and got him a good job and living in Amarillo. So
wow, he stayed in Amarillo.
Yeah, and he stayed in Amarillo.
Yeah, wow, that's a big it's
a big change. Exactly, from Mississippi to the Panhandle.
Yeah,
wow, yeah. But and I say Amarillo, it's Canyon, but huge. That was. I'm just really proud of that one because Pierre. He did some amazing things in his life and in his family's life that I think is going to, really just help future generations of Barlows that are out there in this world.
Yeah, no, I mean, you provided he earned it, and you provided an opportunity for him to continue to earn that position on the team and to change his life.
Yeah, he ended up starting for us. We tried not to have him shoot very much, but he did, and he hit some really big shots. We won a conference championship with him on that team, won the Lone Star.
If
and
Pierre sees this, he might give you some grief about saying he can't shoot.
He knows. I think we told him you're not allowed to shoot, and then he would do it anyways.
Yeah,
but
well, it only takes one to go in, right?
That's right. Hey, yeah, shooters got to shoot.
So, yeah, that's right. If you don't shoot, you're not going to make it.
That's right. So he had a different mentality.
Little
than
Jordan
the coach
comment. You miss.
All the ones you don't take.
100% of the shots that you don't take.
Yeah.
So. Well, so I think we're coming up on the end. Justin, it's going to be first of many. I know you're going to be back here talking probably some more technical and some more in-depth stuff as we move forward.
Perfect.
Really appreciate the time. If people want to reach out to you, they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn. You can shoot me an email, justin.ashley@coldwartechnology.com. But definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm there.
Perfect. We've got to go finish prepping for our big networking event tomorrow, Crawfish.
Crawfish.
So looking forward to it.
All right.
And hopefully the weather stays nice. So
perfect.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lee.